I am so pumped because we've been trying to coordinate for a little while, and you guys can understand why this guy is a little bit busy because he got a lot going on. But I have Mark Metry with me here joining us with Coaching Hub to just basically break down his podcast coaching and communication coaching that he does with folks. So say what's up, man.
Anton, dude, thank you so much for having me. Uh, if the opportunity shows itself, I'm very, very, very excited to, share anything that I have to maybe add value to anybody out there that is interested in starting a podcast or already has a podcast and wants to take it to that next level.
See, where I see you, man, is like honestly, where I see this conversation going in the future is corporations. I see you and people like you who have these skill sets being able to go into organizations and teaching them how to set up another channel of communication with their audience, with their consumer, because podcasts, they're blowing up and everything's happening. And that's what I want to be able to do is go into a company and say, let's assess everything that's going on. And then under 7 umbrellas of coaching that we have, you know what? I got this amazing guy, Mark, that has a company that teaches people how to do this. Let's bring them in and educate your C-level leadership on how they can do that. And that's where I truly see this really blossoming in the future, at least for a selfish standpoint, how Coaching Hub would love to be able to use you in the future. But let's just jump straight into it, with the questions that I got for you. So what's your favorite coaching tip about starting a podcast that you would love to give to our audience?
Yeah, so real quick, believe it or not, I actually already do that with corporations. One of my clients is a Fortune 500 company and currently working on a Fortune 100 company. So it's something that I already do, go into organizations and help them establish this new way of communication, train whoever needs to be trained to host the podcast and the producing and so on and so forth. But my favorite tip that I like to give to clients is, here's usually what I say. And this is especially when it comes to podcasting, right? Because that's all I coach, and I don't coach anything else. I tell them that this podcasting is not something that you should view as like this new marketing strategy that you guys are going to try. And the reason why I say that is because, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations will say, all right, we're going to try to do this podcasting thing for like 6 months. And if it works out, okay, we're going to keep going. But if it doesn't get the numbers that we want to see, we're going to cancel it. And the problem that I have for that is podcasting right now is just such a new medium, and it's a growing medium. And even if it's not, podcasting is one of those platforms that really requires dedication to build trust. And it's like this. Almost everyone that starts a podcast within this first 6 months, nobody listens to it. So if you're out there and you're trying to look for certain numbers and you're not getting them, first off, you're probably doing something wrong. But second off, you just haven't done it long enough. And so I know for me, nobody listened to my podcast really for the first 6 to 8 months. And if I was doing it as like, this 6 month like trial strategy, and if it doesn't work, it wasn't getting the numbers, I'm going to quit. And so what I tell people, instead of looking at it from this other marketing thing, to try to integrate it in your current system, because the real value in that is, everyone's trying to produce content, right? Whether it's for social media or whether it's for a company's blog or whether it's for, writing a white paper or a case study for one of your clients. When you go on the mission of hosting a podcast and you are consistently recording these interviews or these solo casts, or, maybe it's a wide variety, you can do a lot with podcasts. But if you're constantly doing that, you're constantly creating content, you can then take that content and then start integrating that with like your social media, start breaking up the podcast in like 60-second snippets. And then eventually, as you build your platform, start using your podcast as like a loudspeaker to save you money on marketing instead of paying, $15,000 a month on like Facebook advertising. Like maybe you could do that also, but it's like if you already have a dedicated base of listeners that you have built from the podcast, it'll just help amplify your message even more. And so that's really what I tell people and organizations. Try to find a way to integrate this, because it is so easy, and it's actually going to save you more time and even more money in the long term when you start talking about time, energy, investment, hiring. So that's my number one tip for my podcast and clients.
That's cool, man. I mean, I hear 2 points, and that's why, you may not have been a coach forever, but you've came here because you grasp a really fundamental coaching concept. It's consistency. You have to have consistency built in, but you're also adding in a layer into it. You're saying the right mindset from the start. You have to have the right outlook. So when you come to this crossroads, okay, I've been here 6 months, what do I do? You don't start taking the wrong turn because you started with the wrong mindset, right? So I love that. And then the other part is that I'm taking away from it. People like to buy from people they like, right? So it speeds up that sales cycle. I understand because I've been in sales for, 11, 12 years. And the hardest thing is, how do you get them to buy on first, second, or third attempt versus the 12th, right? How is it that I get them to engage with me after my second post, third post, whatever, versus 6 months of posting? And I think podcasting is doing that, because podcasting, in my opinion, is one of the only deep learning methods we have right now, because attention span is so small, right? And actually argue with my partner about this today. And she's like, yeah, we should do small things like that. I'm like, but we're not actually learning from that. I need you to understand that that's meant to grab attention, but it needs to pull them into something deeper. And that's exactly what you're talking about. I love it, man. So, as far as podcast coaching goes, tell me kind of a story, how you became this. How did you become a podcast coach? Is this something that you were always doing, not even necessarily the podcasting side, but just educating people and telling people? Because that's not all you coach on. I mean, you may not do it professionally, but on LinkedIn, you're constantly talking about, digestive health, your overall, internal health, which is how I've really started following your content from, because it's a big passion of mine. So how did you land here?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So like, I didn't purposely try to do this at all. I was just, moving along my own podcast. I was just trying to grow that. And it wasn't until August of last year where my podcast like really started to go to the next level. It started to pop. Like, I started to book like some of the biggest guests I've had on. Apple ranked my podcast in the top 100 alongside people like, or companies like NPR and like Tim Ferriss and Gary V. And like, when that happened, that's really when I saw like a tidal wave of people just like reaching out to me and saying like, hey Mark, either like, like I have this podcast, but I don't really know how it works. I've been doing it for like 3 months. And I've kind of started it alongside like my small business, and it gets 10 downloads, or it gets like 50 downloads an episode. Like, what would it take for us to work together? And it was little instances like that. And then people just started hiring me. And then eventually that led to me working with like startups to like Fortune 500s that I talked about. And it just kind of like set me on this train that was not intentional whatsoever. And, as I've been working with my clients, like, as one of them within 3 months of working with me ended up getting their podcast ranked in like the top 10 under their niche. And then like after that happened, like I just started seeing other successes with my clients. And that kind of gave me the reassurance of like, okay, what I'm doing here is, I think, a unique service, especially as this industry emerges. And, I was reading this statistic the other day that was like, by next year, by 2020, podcasting might only be a $1 billion industry, but it is much more likely to generate billions and billions and billions of dollars of revenue for other industries, for other corporations. And I think it's like, when you have a communication medium that is emerging, that is new, the people who get on there early and execute well and are consistent, like you said, they're the ones that, build the real estate that is going to enable them to create the mega organizations, to contribute the most towards causes in the future, because of the amount of attention that they have gathered, and then subsequently the amount of talent that they can attract, the amount of funds, the amount of energy that they can bring into their organization. And so when that stuff started happening, I was just like, all right, I'm going to keep moving on this path. this podcasting stuff is just new, and I'm going to see what happens like in 2020. And, I'm having fun so far. So I've been continuing to do it.
What I love about you, man, and I see this all the time. I see this with all your life experience, with overcoming anxiety and everything. And you experience something, and instead of like, okay, I'm gonna hold on to this and protect it and not show it to anybody. Excuse me. You're like, hey guys, here's what I got. Come on with me. Like everybody, come on. Like we're gonna get better. We're all gonna benefit from this. And you're the definition of abundance mindset, man. I mean, I love it. I told you this the first time we talked. I love it when you get on a call with a person and they're the same thing as what you see on social media. They're the same person. They're the same individual. It's not a social proof that they're trying to create and be this thing. Like you're just authentic you, man. And I appreciate it so much. Next question to you is, so you're a podcast coach. What's kind of a high level process that you describe? What is, if you were to just touch on an outline that you work with your clients with, what would that look like?
Yeah, good question. So in a rough standpoint, the first thing that I want to do when I meet with somebody is kind of, understand their vision, understand their intentions, understand any kind of goals that they want to hit for this podcast, anything that they want to, use the podcast for to build leverage. And then, we do some exercises like, we do sometimes like a brain dump, and that's kind of like a more creative exercise about, just like blasting out words, no filter, kind of like association if it's in the creative standpoint of, first starting the podcast. And then when I am, working with either a producer or kind of a logistical person that's gonna, I'm gonna help them set up kind of like all the technical aspects, like what they should and shouldn't do, then we just sort of go down like a checklist of like, okay, we've got the title down that, we got from the brain dump. We've got we've got the cover art down. We've got the description down that we formulated. We've got we've got like all the guest episodes that are scheduled and going to go live on this day. And then, from that point on, it's really just a matter of getting them in the mindset of sort of like building the network. So what I have people do is like, whenever somebody starts a podcast, I have them write like a dream list of guests that they want to have on. Like, for me, my dream list is like Eminem, like Elon Musk, like people like that I truly do believe that I'm going to interview one day. And I do that as sort of, setting the North Star. And then I ask them, kind of like, who are 10 people, 15 people that you could reach out to like right now that are good friends of yours that, may not be doing something like totally crazy, but fit in line enough with your image, the brand, the platform that you want to create. And then it's just a matter of inviting those people, and there's some other logistical work like that. And then what I tell people to do is like, before launch day, when the launch date is identified, to have like 10 episodes, 12 episodes that go live right away on the first day.
Oh,
And
wow.
that kind of, and that kind of gives people like the same mentality of like what Netflix does. When Netflix releases a TV show, they don't release one episode. They release a season at a time. And it's that kind of similar model that we want to copy with podcasting, because, it's been shown like if you follow that strategy, so to speak, 10 to 15 episodes, and then at the same time you like call your mom, you text your grandma, and you say, hey, I'm starting a podcast that's going to go live tomorrow. I would break my leg off and give it to you if you would go into iTunes and write me a review. And it's usually like those two things on kind of like a tactical level that end up getting somebody's podcast ranked by Apple in the new and noteworthy list. And yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different processes that I can break down, but those are just some of the few that come to mind.
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, it just shows, like, when you sit to a person and you just sprinkle a little bit of your knowledge, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm taking notes. I'm like, I'm gonna have to pay this guy after this and send me an invoice. Um, but it just shows your depth of knowledge and your experience, man. I love it. So the process you just described is ultimately the ship, the vessel that carries people from point A to point B. What is the ultimate destination for your clients that you look for, and how do you know that they got there?
Man, that's such a great question. And that's why I like to kind of work this out at the beginning because, you know, people don't start things for the same reasons. I have a client of mine that he started his podcast and I worked with him because he wasn't even necessarily looking for more listeners. He wasn't looking to start like a top 100 podcast, but he just wanted to establish himself as a leader in like this hyper specific niche in order to start being a speaker at events, in order to start running his own events. And so that's an example. And it's like, hey, you got a speaking request from somebody who listened to your podcast 3 months while we're working. Yeah, that's definitely a goal. And then on the flip side of that, one of the biggest clients that I've worked with, the CEO, they also started a podcast not really to get sales. It was a pretty like massive like corporation. So like they weren't doing it for like increased sales or increased speaking or even getting it like in the top 100. But their primary goal was just to have the current employees of that corporation listen in on the podcast that's hosted by their CEO to get an insight on what is the thing that matters most to the CEO. And this topic happened to be human potential. And then at the same time, it was also created to attract new talent for hiring because they were trying to attract young people. And if you look at the demographics of podcasting, most podcasting is for roughly like 40-year-olds and under, even though there's still a lot of people 40 and older that listen to them. And so, that was one of their goals of like, hey, let's try this new like hiring strategy of making this awesome podcast, talking about awesome stuff that isn't even actually related to our industry, but it's just talking about like human potential and mindset. And it's like, a way that you could score that is to see like, 5 people just applied to this job, or you got like 6 emails from younger people saying that, they want to be this agent, this kind of employee at this company. And so it's definitely different for each kind of individual and each kind of organization, but it's really just a matter of, in my opinion, like pivoting and testing. I think it's cool that you've got to set kind of like a North Star, like your main primary goal, but it's also really important to consistently and periodically check in and be like, okay, if we were to like reverse engineer this goal to happen, what are like steps 1, 2, and 3, or 3, 2, and 1 that need to happen before that? And then are they even happening to the expectations that we had when we were sitting down and planning this? And so like, yeah, like the way that you could check it, it definitely depends. For some people, it's to get, 5,000 downloads an episode. Some people, it's just about hitting these certain metrics. For some other people, it's about, some more like human potential, high level stuff, hiring, firing, like different kinds of events, being like known as like a top 10 influencer in your niche, in your industry. And then seeing like other media publications, other companies kind of backing that up and showing you that like, okay, this goal actually happened and it's like live out there in the real world, if that made sense.
No, of course, man. And you just show, for one, why the need for a coach exists, because we see things in a very small peephole, right? And we only see it from one angle, but you just showed such versatility in a 2-minute conversation of what can be done in a podcast. But I'm sure if somebody sits down with you, that's a lot more different things, right? So that leads me to my next question, more on the business side. Who's your ideal client? Who do you look for in your potential clients?
Yeah, man. So it's an interesting question because, like podcasting has been around for a long time, believe it or not. It just wasn't really popular. There have always been sort of like the like RSS feeds and like the tunnels and the underground of the internet. So like podcasting has been around for a while, but we kind of saw podcasting sort of take like a mainstream um, awareness in 2016. And we're sitting here in 2019, and I know it's still very much like the beginning of the beginning. Like I have said that like I fundamentally believe that in 5 years, every reputable organization and brand that's worth its salt is going to have a podcast. Not necessarily for like the marketing perspective, but for those other angles that I just told you. And so for me, what I genuinely want to do is I know that I'm sort of new myself to this industry, but I'm trying to like, lead with like a torch. So like I genuinely want to train like a very few select number of people that are going to be known in like 10 years from now, like the world's most famous, the world's greatest podcast hosts. I want to help build that up. And I'm not really interested in um, like my name being attached to that. It's just like I have seen how hosting a podcast has changed my life and changed the lives of so many people that send me messages and send me emails all the time that are like, from entrepreneurs to like single moms to like 58-year-old dads, like just a wide spectrum. And I just want to continue to build on that momentum and create that. And like, honestly, for me, to be honest, I'm only interested in like those individuals slash small organizations that have like that, like they're like, yo, I want to have one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and I want you to help me to make it happen. Or like a very big corporation, like in the Fortune 500 that has enough like revenue and has enough capital to be able to hire me to create this extensive channel within their previously existing organization. So those are really the two kinds of people that I'm looking, or the two kinds of companies that I'm looking for.
I love two things, man. I love that you said you're very specific with who you're looking for. You're not just looking for anybody that's going to pay you. That's really one of the things. Like I don't post every interview we do with coaches on Coaching Hub. Because I say that everybody that's on Coaching Hub is vetted by either myself or our leadership team. This question is probably one of the biggest questions that as well as the system, because if you're just going, oh yeah, I'm going to help everybody, I'm like, you've probably not helped a lot of people yet. And you're just trying to, say that you're something for everybody. And I'm like, no, I want people that want to be everything for someone, and that's a different approach. And the other part I love is that you're just after those driven folks because you're so driven. You're trying to find people that are kind of like similar. I'm guessing, but it's just what I feel from you.
Yes.
Is trying to get people in the same mindset that think like you. And those are my favorite clients, right? I was talking about this yesterday with somebody. I took a 19-month hiatus from coaching at one point in my life, in a specific type of coaching I was doing. I stopped doing that coaching for 19 months because I thought I didn't like it. And what I realized is just took on a bunch of people that weren't fitting my style. And I was constantly just putting myself in a situation that wasn't comfortable. And I finally changed it all up, changed my clientele, start saying no to majority of people and, refer them out to more suitable people. And it just got so much better. So you're right on track, man. So what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to try to get you as a coach?
Yeah, you can send me an email. My email is Mark, MARK, at VUDream.com. And, you could just Google my name, send me a message on LinkedIn, but email is probably the best.
Love it, brother. Well, thank you so much, man. This has been great. Even informational for me. I learned so much. I'm sure our audience is going to learn as well. So thanks so much for being on.